Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this Experience Longy event, Healing Communities with Music. I'm Allison Cooley, the Chief Development Officer here at Longy School of Music, and we are so very glad you are here with us for this conversation. Before we begin in earnest, I want to thank our donors. Because of you, we are preparing our students to make a difference in the world. And I'd also like to thank our event co-sponsors, Cary Memorial Library, Dunamis, Harmony and Hope, Riverview Chamber Players, Shelter Music Boston, and Tunefoolery Music. If you are new to Longy, welcome. And here's a little context. We are a reimagined conservatory centered around music as social change. We meet our students where they are on their journey to becoming the musicians the world needs them to be. We value all music making and honor all music makers. Tonight, you're going to hear a lot about that last value especially. And now for our program, and 2 questions for you to consider as we begin. Do you remember a moment in your life, likely a profound, possibly life-altering moment, when music, either you playing it or you hearing it, was the only thing that brought comfort, connection, or peace? I bet some of you remember the exact piece of music. So what did music do for you in that moment that nothing else could? I'd now like to welcome Dean Judith Bose. Judy, we are so glad that you're here with us tonight. Thank you. At Longy, we spend a lot of time talking about how we're leading the seismic shift in centering music as social change. And so we're so glad you're here tonight to help us understand why is music as a healing art Longy's work to do, and also help us frame this topic for discussion, healing communities with music.
Thank you so much, Allison, and a warm welcome to all of you joining us this evening. It's really an honor to be able to frame the moment for my really esteemed colleagues that you'll be able to meet in a moment. And Allison, I think that, Longy's mission is to prepare musicians to make a difference in the world. And so in response to your question, when we talk about making a difference, and when I've been talking about it, I've been using this hand gesture because I set it in contrast to a more traditional historical role for conservatories, which is to sort of train the cream of the crop and an elite group of musicians to take a very few elite kinds of jobs. So it looks like this. Whereas we think about what we're doing at Longy as moving towards this, right? Preparing musicians for a wide variety of roles in which they can truly make a difference. And when we talk about centering social change, it can sometimes feel like jargon. So what are the things that social change means? Well, music as a healing art for Longy certainly sits as one of those pivotal items that we mean when we talk about social change. So music as a healing art at Longy currently has 2 sort of pathways. And one of those pathways is a course that's open to all of the students at the conservatory, where they can learn skills and presence of being and habits that allow them as musicians, as performers, to be with folks to create a healing environment. And when I say folks, that could be elders in senior centers, or that might be in hospital or clinical settings. So they learn how to make musical choices that create a healing environment. And that's a first step. That's open to any student at the conservatory, and that's an experience that they can take on with them into their lives. For students that are really interested in going deeper than that, we also have a pathway through a partnership with an organization called Music for Healing and Transition program, in which they can attend a summer session of modules and become a certified music practitioner in therapeutic music. And this is a specialization even further that really prepares them for clinical settings, for hospice work, for being with folks that are making the transition from life to death, through death and beyond. And so these are two specific pathways that we have at Longy. And the faculty that you're about to meet this evening both have experiences in both of those, both the introductory class and through this certification process. So we really feel passionate that this is Longy's work to do because it's the perfect work for performers. It's not a different degree in music therapy, which is something else, that's a different conversation, but it's a way that performers can use their musical choices to make behavioral and biological sort of differences in the folks around them. So we really strongly believe this is the work of a conservatory that's opening the door to preparing musicians to make a difference in the world. Now, as we move forward into the future, we're also thinking really expansively, even beyond the course, Music as a Healing Art, and the certification process. And that's what brings us to the topic at hand this evening, healing communities with the power of music. And we feel like this is the next frontier for us at Longy. If we've learned how to use music and use our musical choices to make these kinds of impacts and these kinds of differences, then certainly there are larger communities where this could be applied and used. And the two wonderful musicians that you're going to meet this evening are deeply involved in those pursuits in their own artistic pathways, in their own artistic lives. And we're really looking forward to how they are a part of bringing Longy along to the next frontier of music as a healing art, which is really working deeply in community. And I think you'll get a beautiful idea of what that work can be and what that means when you meet Rebecca and Tony this evening.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Judy, for that framing. We really appreciate it. And I have to say, having a dean who you yourself have been very committed to this work. You're on your way to becoming a certified music practitioner. And I love the modeling that you continue to do for our students and your passion for this. So Judy, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Yeah.
So before we move on to our next guest, I do want to acknowledge that for some of you, this concept of healing communities with music will be really new. And we want to make sure that we answer as many of your questions as we can so that when you leave tonight, you're well on your way to becoming an advocate for this work. So therefore, as your questions come up, add them into the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And I will certainly do my best to integrate your questions throughout the event. And without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Rebecca Strauss. Rebecca is an original member of Shelter Music Boston, the founder and director of Harmony and Hope. She is a certified music practitioner and a very important part of Longy's Music as a Healing Art faculty. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
So, Rebecca, let's start with a broad question, because I think what Judy was talking about when she was talking about this meaningful life in music that we're really broadening the lens on for our students. There's a becoming story with you as an artist to the socially engaged musician you are today. Can you share a little bit about your becoming story?
So it has always been my desire. Since high school, I remember just wanting to take chamber music into settings off the concert stage to reach people that couldn't necessarily go to a concert hall. I'm not really sure actually why I had that desire, except that I've always been the kind of person that is a caretaker, always wanting to do something to help people feel comfortable, to help ease their pain. And so to marry, in a sense, the music with that natural part of myself, that natural caretaker, I think that it was in me at an early age, but I didn't really know how to do it until later in life. And then going through my own sort of healing process with some trauma that I had as a child, and really recognizing the difficulty and the pain and the loneliness going through that, and really coming back to music after going through that process and looking at how beautiful music is, and how not only was it able to heal me in some ways, but I really was able to look at how music can help others, and it sort of sparked that desire that I had in high school of really wanting to do something with music to help others. And in that process, my partner and I created a program. She's a photographer. She created beautiful photography, and I did music based on kind of my journey through that trauma. And I noticed not only the healing that I gained from it, but I noticed for the audiences for whom we performed it, that it was also very healing. And so that was incredibly intriguing to me, and really it never left me that I wanted to do something to use music to help others out of their pain, their trauma, their loneliness, whatever it happened to be. And then I really started focusing in on that and finding ways to do that in multiple ways.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in what you just said, because it seems to me that early on you were making this connection between the human experience and how music could be part of someone's journey in a positive way, to allow them, what I was saying earlier, the connection, the peace, and the comfort. And I'm curious, before we kind of move on into a bit more of your story, as a faculty member, and in your course, Music is a Healing Art is, I mean, the wait lists for this course are unbelievable. It is the most sought after course at Longy. What in your story that you just shared reminds you of the awakening and the broadening that you see with your students, who for some are just making this connection between what you were just talking about for the very first time in your course?
I think for the students, that they are learning that healing others is about for healing themselves, and becoming aware of what's going on with them. And so that there's that element. There's also that element where they see that they don't have to play a huge fancy concerto that's incredibly technically difficult to make a deep connection with their music, and to feel that their music has incredible value. Value on the sense of human to human connection. So it can heal those for whom they're performing, and really they can see it, in front of their eyes, and they can connect with someone deeply. And the thing that I hear them say a lot is, I was giving this music, providing this music for others, but what I got back for myself, how I was healed, was like, it just blows their mind. And there's an intimacy in the kinds of performances that they do, that for them, that in and of itself is also healing. It's almost like just being wrapped in a blanket or something. It feels really, really good to them. So there's something, I think it allows the students to offer their music out of generosity and out of love, rather than, having to perform everything to perfection to seem fantastic. They can truly be themselves. And I think I just see them blossom in that. And it's really beautiful to watch them unfold.
Well, you have hit on one of the principles we talk a lot about at Longy, which is passion over perfection. And it seems to me that your course, as well as other opportunities at Longy, really help to maybe break some of those concepts that maybe have been living with students their whole academic life. And then they come to Longy and they're awakened to a whole new world of what and how and why they can exist as a musician. That's amazing. I want to ask you specifically about the work that you're doing at Harmony and Hope. But before we go there, as a founding member of Shelter Music Boston, can you share with me and the audience the mission of this particular organization and how this idea of healing communities with music intersects with Shelter Music Boston?
So just as a technical thing, because Shelter Music Boston is one of the co-sponsors, I am technically an original member and not the founding member. So just to
thank you for that.
Make sure that that's clear. However, given that I have played with Shelter Music since its inception, since the very first concert, and I've actually played, I think, close to 400 performances with Shelter Music Boston. So something like 380. I don't remember the exact exact number rather. So I don't have the exact mission statement. So if Shelter Music Boston people are in the audience, I will not read the exact one. I don't have it in front of me, but I will say that our goal is to bring dignity and beauty of music to those who wouldn't normally get to experience the music, and to offer the music in a way that is about, in a sense, saying we're on the same level here. We're offering this music. We want to be with you in this concert. We are not looking down on you with the music. We are going to share the music together. So that is not a great mission statement, but you can get the exact one from the website. But it's really bringing excellence of professional music to shelter guests, and also to substance abuse recovery programs, as well as some children's programs.
And so when you enter a space that is doing really important work with unhoused community members, can you talk about what is actually happening in that space? Is there teaching artistry happening? Sort of how are programs created? And also, how do you maybe hear about the reaction that the audience members have to the music? I'm just curious so people can get a little bit more of an understanding of what happens in those experiences.
Yeah, so Shelter Music Boston is generally small chamber ensembles. We, the musicians, and the ensemble leader create the programs. They're usually about 45 minutes or to an hour or so. And the idea is to provide a variety of music that might, from perhaps different genres and different periods, that will have a range of emotional moods, I guess, and styles. So almost like any other concert, it's a way of creating sometimes an arc, starting with something that's really exciting, maybe getting to a point where you're calm. At this point, also really including music by composers of color and women. In terms of how we interact with the audience, it's very relaxed. very intimate in that we say hello, we invite their questions, their comments, their thoughts, their feelings, any stories that come up about the music. We tell them a little bit about the pieces. And in some cases, depending on the setting, we might talk quite a bit, have really robust conversations, and other settings or other times it might be very little talking. But what is amazing about Shelter Music Boston is that we will go into a homeless shelter where there's a lot of noise, a lot of chaos. Some people are drunk, some people are high, some people have mental illnesses. They're very often not beautiful spaces, kind of crammed. And as you can imagine, not having a home and being in an environment where you have no privacy, really, and you really don't know where you're going to sleep the next night, causes a lot of anxiety. So we come into that crazy environment, and what has happened, I would say, for pretty much every concert that I've done, is there's a lot of noise at first, and we're playing through the noise. But usually after about the second piece, you can feel everything calm down. You can feel the energy chill out, and you can sense the concentration, the focus, and the engagement on the music. To the point, sometimes if there is some noise, there are sometimes audience members who are telling everyone else to be quiet so they can hear the music. And when we return to the same shelters over and over, so when we come back, I've had experiences where we'll come back and I've gotten standing ovation as I'm walking into the shelter because they're so excited to have the music. And sometimes people are like, "Are you going to play Mozart tonight?" So it's really wonderful, and we end up having a relationship with those people who are there, month after month. That they get to know us, we get to know them, and then they start to expect and get used to the music, to the point where they're like, once I'm out of this shelter, I'm going to come back for these concerts. It's pretty powerful.
That is powerful. And I think what I'm hearing is it needs to be relational. It needs to be consistent and constant.
Absolutely.
Also hearing something that's really profound is the concept of music creating sanctuary.
Yes.
Which is pretty profound. I would now love to talk to you about, I know what is your absolute passion, which is harmony and hope. And I'm wondering, certainly set the stage and share what you would like to share in terms of the context of harmony and hope, but especially if there's a particular story that would really illustrate the power of the work you're doing in this organization, I would really love for you to be able to share that.
Yeah, so in 2016, I started Harmony and Hope, really out of a desire to deal with my fears and concerns and just societally, if that's a word, the issue of gun violence and homicide. And they're just story after story of people being killed, and often young Black men in particular that were killed. And you hear about this in the news, but I rarely really heard about the families. Who are the families that are experiencing this tremendous loss? And how are we as a society dealing with the fear around gun violence and mass shootings? And I really wasn't sure how to deal with it. And I just basically asked myself the question, well, what are you good at? What can you bring to the table? And so the answer for me was music. And I decided to, because I felt that gun violence is a major epidemic in our society, I thought, well, one little concert is not going to do it. So let me make it bigger. So I decided to do a day, 12 hours of concerts in one day. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Every hour we had a different chamber ensemble performing, and I played quite a few of them. And we brought different people in, some families of homicide victims, to come and speak about their experience. So every hour we had a different person speaking. We had someone from the Boston Police Department and people working to help those who were going through this trauma. And some of the families I had not even met until the concert date. I'd spoken with them on the phone. But the experience was so powerful for the musicians, who felt like they had an opportunity to do something about this epidemic, and that they could use their music was a beautiful, it made them feel really good. And the impact on the families was profound, because they felt heard, they felt noticed, they felt like their problems were not hidden from the greater society. And underneath all that, I think they felt loved, if I could say that. I didn't really know them yet. But fast forward to today, I've done 4 different Harmony and Hope concerts since. Only the first time did the 12 hours, but from then, just an annual concert after that. And then during the pandemic, I have been playing music on our Zoom calls, which have been a support group for these families of homicide victims, and continuing that music. And then I've offered therapeutic music to them individually. And I have just been a part of their lives. And I also have been playing music for a nightly meditation that some of them are involved with. And so it's expanded and grown and become really, they're my friends now. So there's a deep connection. And it's just gone from this, let's try this music and see if this works, to really creating, in a sense, family members where we're doing this together. I'm in it with them, even though I haven't had that experience. So so it's been amazing. And I don't know what's going to happen once things open up even more, when it's safe to do Harmony and Hope as a concert again. I'm envisioning it will be more of ritual and connection and music, and just much more familial, because at this point I know so many people. So
no, again, Rebecca, thank you for sharing all of that. And again, what I find so interesting is you keep talking about, well, here's another opportunity for music to present itself, to be present in this particular experience, whether it's a meditation, whether it's support group. And I think, again, it just speaks to how easy it is for music to be an answer, to be part of an experience for people on this journey. So thank you so much for everything you've done, continue to do, and for what you share with our students. So we're going to talk to Tony now, but don't go too far away, because you're going to come back in a little bit. Thanks, Rebecca.
thank you.
I'd like to introduce you all to Tony Leva, the Community Music Director of Tunefoolery Music and a Longy faculty member. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, Allison, thank you. Yeah.
So Tony, you and I had this really beautiful conversation not too long ago when we got to know each other and talk about the event we were going to have tonight. And I remember this really lovely story that you shared about your dad and the work that he did, and where he would bring you as a kid that helped open your eyes to the broader picture of who was in your community. Could you share that story?
Sure. So my dad taught psychology at a university in New York, and outside of the university, he would go to behavioral health centers or psychiatric hospitals and do certain testing for insurances and to help the hospitals. And often I would come along, most of the time probably wait in the car, but sometimes I'd be in a lobby or be around, or people would be out on that campus of that healthcare facility. And so I grew up around that environment a little bit, and just, with a family that was interested in psychology, we talked about those things. And yeah, so that it's been a part of, it's been a part of my life for a long time.
Yeah. So what are some of the milestone moments in your becoming story from that, those moments with your dad to the work you're now doing with Tunefoolery? What was sort of your awakening to what you could do as a musician in this space?
Yeah, well, I'll tied to my dad a little bit too, because he was a big fan of music and exposed me to all types of music, oftentimes on cassette tapes that he had recorded, where there would just be every genre of music you could imagine cutting into one song, coming out of another one. And so I feel like my music is kind of like that sometimes. And I've just been, and it really inspired me to, seek out as much of music as I could. And when I, through doing that, I learned, you listen to one thing and it sends you to something else and to another part of the world. And then you're learning about that culture and understanding that. And I also had some very fortunate opportunities to live, like I lived in Argentina for a little while. I was in Malaysia. I've been to Japan, so to get to see this and to feel, kind of, I guess, more connected to humans and people, and that, we're all going to suffer in some way and experience, and we can share that experience actually. And so I feel like I got a little derailed because so I've always been interested in music and have been playing since I was young, but my primary instrument, which is the bass, I didn't come to until I was in my 20s. And it was something I was always interested in, but not getting into too many details, I was just kind of pushed in different directions and tried some other things. And I felt that music was not something that I needed to have anybody tell me how to do it. That I thought that it was, and I still believe this, that it's for everybody, and that we have music in us, some more than others, or some it's more easily accessible than others, but it's there as a potential, and that has felt, it felt like it kept me in a place of not really being able to hide behind anything other than what I could do. And I was just very hungry and wanted to play. And a big moment, I think, for me in thinking about this topic this evening is meeting a bassist named Henry Grimes, who disappeared for about 30 years, was a very well-known bassist in the 1950s, 1960s. And then, he struggled a bit. I don't know his diagnosis, so I don't like to say anything, but, I know people that are close with him and talked about autism, perhaps bipolar. He experienced some homelessness. But I got to spend, when some social workers found that he was still alive, they kind of rallied the music community and got him a bass, and in his 70s began to tour the world again and play with lots of people. And I spent a number of months over a couple of years driving him around the country, and getting to just be in his presence and feel that sort of support of, if you ask Henry, like, what should I practice? And he would say, like, make up your own scale, like, there's no, like, why do you do what other people do? Like, do you? And those are sort of things that I've always gravitated towards. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really interesting. You're talking about this particular individual
Mm-hmm.
who you had the real blessing of getting to spend time with. It was an awakening for you of people who deal with social isolation because of mental health challenges. And so from that moment to where you are now, though, what started to draw you in where you said, Tony, I think you can make a difference with your music in this way? What were those steps to get to where you are?
Yeah, I was very lucky to have, made a friend here who worked for this organization, Tunefoolery, where I now work. And when I first moved to Boston, he was teaching guitar at this place, and my memory is that he was noticing that a lot of people in the Tunefoolery organization were really like solo musicians, kind of doing their own thing and not really playing out in public that much. And so he's like, let's put a concert together at the Lily Pad, and I'm going to invite some musicians that are going to be your backing band. And don't worry about anything. He made charts for us, and like there's no rehearsal. We just showed up and played, and it was super thrilled because we didn't know what the songs were going to sound like. We didn't know who the people were. They didn't know what the songs were going to sound like. And immediately me and my friend Molly, who was playing piano, who she and I collaborate together a lot, we're both just like, I want to be a part of this organization. These people are amazing. So I just started volunteering there, and it's just like I've always wanted people, like, I just hate the exclusion. I mean, like I understand, like, you got to work to be a particular level of musician, and you be the musician that you want to be. And there is an interesting history of, like, on the bandstand is like the place where it goes down, and you might get cut down, but you're going to come back because you're like, I needed to practice to get better. But it doesn't have to be like that all the time. Music is a communal thing. And it's good for us as individuals and in group settings. And I always want anybody who feels like they don't have access, I'll be like, no, you do. Let's do it. No matter where you are, if you can play one note, we can make a song together, and I just, so it's just something that feels, I don't know where it comes from, but it's a feeling that I have.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing all of that. I'm going to have Rebecca come back in because I want to continue the conversation with both of you now. And what I'm curious about is, and Tony, you and I actually talked about this a few weeks ago, the idea that you could have a gig at a jazz club on a Tuesday night and then show up and be, at a different location with work you're doing with Tunefoolery. And the question I asked you was, do you show up as a different person from Tuesday to Wednesday? And I'm really curious if you can answer that question for the audience.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm me everywhere that I go to play. It's the same approach. I want to connect. I want to listen. I need to be present, and let's try and make the best thing happen that we can make happen. If that's playing a tune or trying to read a measure or sing a one note, like it feels like it's all the same to me. And you never, and it's that, that presence and openness, I think are kind of the most important things to bring. and not having like a set agenda,
Mm.
you know.
And Rebecca, I'm going to ask you the same question. So from one sort of gig where you're showing up a certain way to then maybe doing work with Harmony and Hope, are there any adjustments that you feel you need to make from one musical making experience to the next?
If we're talking about, performances in which the intention or the focus is in a sense on the audience, on serving through music, then the way I show up is the same. And I think that is very much through the intention of using the music in a sense as a conduit for healing. And when you are open, I guess, similar to what Tony just said, when you're open to the experience, whatever it might be, sometimes it's just so surprising to see the power and the impact of what you are doing. Even if you are playing maybe in your own perception that you're not playing at your absolute best, it still has an impact on the audience that is really profound. And that is a beautiful thing to witness.
And Tony, along those lines of being surprised, have there been moments of surprise for you in your work with Tunefoolery? Do you have a particular story?
Yeah, I mean, it's so many, man. There's so many great people and like growth that happens. One story, I think I've told this before, prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, we were doing this a bit on Zoom. There were a couple shelters that we would go to put on an open mic, and we would bring at least one of our musicians, and I would be there. We put on like a 20 to 30 minute performance and then open up the stage to anybody, whatever they want to do, tell a joke, play music. I could improvise with them. It didn't matter. And I remember one time, or they might even sing karaoke, and there was one guy I hadn't really seen around before, but he was sitting in the front row, but like super slouched, his shoes were untied, and he was just like super down. And I went up to him because I play with people, but I kind of walk around, just see how people are doing, see if people want to do things. And I asked him, I was like, do you want to, share anything tonight? And he said, no, I can't do that. And I was like, well, I'm not trying to push you, but like, if you'd like to sing a song, like we could play the music, you can sing along. Like I could try and sing along with you if that would make you feel more comfortable. I don't really sing, but I'd be willing to do it. And he says no. And then later, I won't say what he said, I'll keep it clean. But he comes up and he's like, let me sing this song. And it's great. And I didn't recognize the tune. I wish I had written this down, but it was this real like sexy, like big band, like 70s funk tune. And he got, maybe through like 60% of the first verse and was kind of saying like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And then everybody who's listening was like, no, you're doing great, kind of cheering him on. And he powered through like 2 verses, and then he's like, I'm done. He's like, but I feel so much better now than I did before. And I was just like, that's it right there. Just that, like, I'm not gonna say like we didn't change this guy's life or anything, but to have a moment where you might be living a life in which most people aren't paying attention to you, or valuing you as an individual, to have, 6 minutes where there's like 15 people all focused on you. They want you to succeed. And when you don't feel like you're succeeding, they cheer you on, and you feel connected for that moment, and maybe for a little while afterwards. And it's like, it's possible to be connected, you know, and you have to experience it though, because there's times where I don't feel like I have it in me to connect with people. Why would people want to connect with me, you know? And I have an apartment, you know, like like my life is very different, but I still experience those things. And so that feels like more opportunity that we can create to create space where people feel valued and heard is a way. And we can do that through music, whether people are musicians or not, you know. Seems like a possibility.
Absolutely. So Rebecca, I guess the question I have for you is, how have you been humbled because of your work with Harmony and Hope?
Oh, wow. You know, I have to think even beyond Harmony and Hope, and just the opportunities that I've had to be with people who have been in situations where they're in extreme pain, whether that's emotional, spiritual, or physical pain, that I'm humbled by it, in the sense that I think there is just this unbelievable strength and beauty that I see in people when they are, sadly, when they're suffering, but the strength and the beauty come out sometimes when they're the music kind of turns it from, you know, potentially feeling hopeless to seeing, this is going to sound silly, but not seeing the light, but a glimmer of hope. Or, as Tony was just describing, going from a place of, you know, maybe this guy didn't feel like he could sing, and then he gets all the support and gets noticed, and this sense of receiving and allowing the music to come into you, so that it does kind of what Judy was talking about at the beginning. It's like it opens something. It opens their hearts. It opens possibilities. And I am humbled by that every day. And when and specifically to Harmony and Hope, the families who have suffered extreme loss and extreme trauma, and for some of them have lost more than one child to homicide, amongst other traumas. And I just think, wow. I think, as Tony said, you know, when I'm feeling down, it's like, to think of the amount, that level of trauma that some other people are going through, it actually inspires me to move forward. And I'm honored truly to be with people who trust me enough to be there with them in whatever emotional space they're in at the moment.
So we're coming to the end of our time. I guess you all have been such amazing panelists that there are literally no questions. You have just blown everybody away. They are deeply moved. But I want to ask if there are any other questions or if there are questions that people have, please do use the Q&A at this point. And I want to ask you this question. When do you both feel your artistry and humanity is most in alignment? And I'm just going to have that as a broad question. I might be leading the witness a little bit, but so yeah, when do you feel your artistry and humanity are most in alignment? And Tony, I'm going to let you go first on that one.
Wow, that's a big question, man. I mean, part of me is just like, have I even ever experienced that? You know, like, I mean, you know, I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful thing to think about. I guess, you know, it's like when you, man, yeah, it's hard because if I know, yeah, it feels like I don't even want to say that I know these things when they happen. It feels like more like a reflection of like after something has gone on of like, oh, okay, like it's like the gigs that I don't really remember, I know were good because I was in a place of not thinking about anything or remembering what was going on. And so if I'm feeling that those things are in line, I guess it's because like we're we're showing up as people to share music together, and also as two human beings trying to live, and we're both willing to be vulnerable in front of each other and really talk about what's going on, whether it's music related or not, it's at a core because they're both the metaphors between music and life are just all the time, you know, and so it feels like if we can communicate vulnerably and honestly with each other with language, spoken language, and we can also do that with music too. And so if we have a session where both of those things happen, then yeah. So sorry, man, you threw me on that one.
Oh, well, it was fun watching you get through that.
All right.
I think, you know, honestly, I think it was because I think it is a profound question. But again, it's something that I think we're doing here at Longy where, my goodness, what an amazing blessing for our students to be considering such a concept, right? So early in their lives. And then what that means they can do in the world. So we actually did have a question that came in. And Rebecca, I am going to actually direct this to you as a faculty member overseeing our Music as a Healing Art course. Do Longy Music as a Healing Art students or CMP students participate in or observe Shelter Music Boston, Harmony and Hope, or Tunefoolery?
I wish the answer was yes, but not necessarily. I have had, I mean, it's not part of the course, I'll put it that way. So in terms of, I can't speak to Tunefoolery, so I'll leave that for Anthony, but, or Tony. You know, that's not part of the course. I have had students attend Shelter Music concerts. However, we've had this thing called a pandemic, and we have not been able to play live for, 2 years now, or almost 2 years. So that's just been off the table. However, in regards to, I think, was the question also regarding attending therapeutic music? What was the?
I think the question is just, obviously you both are part of these amazing, remarkable organizations. And I think probably the way I can help answer this question is, as we're moving forward with our Music as a Healing Art initiative, and Judy was touching on this earlier, I think the idea is that we're just going to look at ways to further and further expand our students' ability to see how therapeutic music can be used at interventions in different settings. So,
Yeah,
and I think, Tony, probably you can answer that because of the Lullaby Project, right? And the work that you're going to be doing in your course.
Yes, yeah, and I can say that with the Lullaby Project, which is a course I'll be running next semester. There will be actual field experience going into the shelter and working with the population that's there to do it. So we'll do a lot of work in the classroom to prep for that, but then go and do it. And as far as Tunefoolery is concerned, I mean, we are always looking for volunteers and teachers, and if people are interested, you can email me or go to the Tunefoolery website and say, hey, I want to come check out what you guys do. And maybe you could come to the space and hang out during a workshop or something, or come to a concert and meet some people and see what's going on. But yeah, real supportive, friendly environments to just reach out.
And I would just like to add that I think that an expansion of the Music as a Healing Art current course, which is really an introduction to the idea of being a healing presence. But I think, as Tony was saying, and you were saying, Allison, that the expansion may be to get students more involved into various parts of the community and experiencing Shelter Music Boston, Harmony and Hope, or a variety of other things, so that they can have more hands-on experience than what they get through the course itself.
Awesome. And we actually had a comment come in from Aline Benoit, who was the founder of our Music as a Healing Art program here at Longy. And she wrote that there is a Music as a Healing Art student who currently works at Shelter Music Boston, having been exposed to the organization in the class. And she's currently doing her independent practicum there as a certified music practitioner. And Aline says proudly she was in the first class that she taught in 2017. One other question that came in: does music heal most effectively when the patient is aware that the music is intended as therapy, or when the patient is totally unaware, and patient is in quotes, is totally unaware of the music as therapy? So I guess the question is, do you all, actively set an intention when you are going into spaces, or is it a very organic thing that happens? And I'm wondering in the question here, does the intention matter in terms of what the participant knows is happening in the musical making or the musical experience, or is it just the experience happening to them enough? So it guess really comes down to intentionality.
I could answer that first, if that's okay, Tony. And also, before I answer that, I just want to take one step back to say that the Music as a Healing Art course is an introduction, but many of the students who do that course move on to the Music for Healing and Transition program to become certified as music practitioners. And most recently, just last week, 4 of the students from Music as a Healing Art class were finishing up their final module of the therapeutic music training. So I don't know, Aline knows the numbers. I don't know the numbers of students involved in the course who've moved on to become therapeutic musicians, but the number is quite high. So I just wanted to mention that. In regards to intention, for me as a performer, it's always setting for me to set my intention to play the music to serve. The response from the audience or the patient or whoever is receiving the music, the way I perceive it is that is totally up to them. So in other words, if they find it healing, that's great. If they don't, that's also great, because it is not my place to force it. And the more it's allowing them to have their own experience and to process it in any way that works for them, that is in itself, in my mind, what is healing. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Here's an interesting question that came in, which is really about space, which is really an interesting concept here. It's space, but it's also, I think, the gathering of the people in the space, who that community is that's gathering in the space. And the question is experiencing, is experiencing Shelter Music Boston, a performance in a shelter, more impactful than experience a concert in Symphony Hall? Does the music convey the same feeling or emotion if heard in these different settings? And again, I would add different communities in these settings, right?
Wow, that's a very cool question. I'm trying to think how to answer that. I would just say that there's a difference in that performing at Symphony Hall, there is a literal boundary between the stage and the audience. I mean, there is space, literal space between the audience and the performers. The performers are up higher on a stage, generally speaking. There is that sense of the audience is there, the performers are here, and we are performing to you, for you. In a shelter, we, the performers, are going into their home, so to speak. We are in their living room, in a sense. We are coming to their space, and we're more intertwined in that, we're literally in their space. And so there is that sense, it's different. And we are closer to them. I mean, sometimes so close, it's like, hey, I need a little room to bow here. So there is something different about that. Would the same music and the same people feel the same in both locations? I honestly don't know the answer to that, because I think they're so significantly different. So
I agree. And I think space is a very interesting concept that's raised in that too, which is a point that I'd want to just make right now, is that Longy really puts a lot of effort into disrupting sort of what has always been, and sort of the idea of the non-proscenium model, Symphony Hall being a proscenium model, but really encouraging our students to try to push the boundaries of what a non-proscenium model is like, how you deliver music in innovative ways through teaching artistry, etc. So I love that we're not just talking to our students about that when it comes to therapeutic music, but we're asking them to push that in their own artistry as musicians, which is really interesting. So I think we are definitely here and at a moment where we've just had such a wonderful, wonderful time talking to both of you and Judy. There's a beautiful comment that came in, and the attendee writes, not a question, but a comment. I am blown away by both of you and feel Longy students and other faculty have such a gift in having you as role models for vulnerability as well as professionals. What exciting work. So I will maybe end where we began. This is Longy's work to do. Thank goodness. Thank you so much, you two, for being part of the Longy community and family, for everything you're doing to prepare our students to follow in your footsteps. I want to also thank Judy Bose, our dean, for starting us tonight. And I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. This is important work, and we need advocates. We need people who believe in this work, because there is, unfortunately, too much pain and suffering in the world. And I think you've heard tonight that music can be a really important part of healing in our communities. So thank you again, Rebecca, Tony, to everyone watching. Thank you for being here. Please do mark your calendars for our next Experience Longy event, Beginner's Mind, How to Engage with New Music. That's on December 14th at 7 p.m., also on Zoom. I wish you all a wonderful evening and good night.